Today we're breaking down the Eagles' blowout victory over the Commanders to reach their third NFC championship in the last 8 years, as well as, yes, the Chiefs getting away with it once again, beating down the Bills to, yes, make their fifth Super Bowl in the last 6 years. Absolute madness out of Kansas City. So Super Bowl 59 on the way, all that and so much more. Strap in. Let's get after it. Shout out to the utilization report presented by DraftKings and Dwain. We're going to kick things off today again with the aforementioned beatdown. Eagles took down the Commanders 55-23, easily covering as 6-point favorites. And the over did cash at 46.5, was pretty much there by the third quarter. So as much as Jayden Daniels and company really did seem like they could move the ball, turns out, man, losing 3 fumbles in a single game is a pretty good way to, lose the contest.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, when you look at the scoreboard, it was a closer game than this, Ian. But even once you take into account like the 3, turnovers, you're like, man, 55 is a lot of points. So the Eagles are they're one of these teams that, like, I know we had our concerns about Jalen Hurts. We'll talk about him more in a minute. But, like, look, loaded offensive line, loaded skilled position players. Really, it's the best defense in the NFL right now. So we just knew they had more pieces in place than the Commanders. Obviously, Jayden Daniels. If I had to choose today for starting, an NFL team, you told me I get Jalen Hurts or I get Jayden Daniels. I'm going Jayden Daniels. I think they've got the quarterback, and there's some things we can talk about there for their future. But the Eagles, man, just a very well put together, well-rounded team. Turnovers were huge, but ultimately just too much for the Commanders in pretty much every phase of the game other than Jayden Daniels doing his thing.
And that did seem to be the difference maker. And we're not trying to say Daniels is just light years better than Hurts, but let's say, we're trying to grade all the position groups. Daniels is maybe an A-, Hurts is a B or a B+. I think every other position group and just facet of the game, Dwain, would actually lean towards Philly. And yeah, Washington came in as the 6th seed to begin with. It was great to see them even make it this far in the first place. But yeah, it did ultimately see that luck run out. So it was a freaking hot start, Dwain, because we had that long 18-play drive from Washington, only resulting in 3 points. And then Saquon goes ahead and just rips off the first offensive touch for a 60-yard score. Really is just incredible how good he has been at doing that. And honestly, man, there truly has been no one better. Per True Media, now Saquon Barkley this season has 9 rushes of 50-plus yards. Since 2012, Adrian Peterson had 7 rushes of 50-plus yards in this season. And then 2018, Saquon had 6. Those are the only 3 instances of a player, again, having more than 5 rushes of 50-plus yards. So, Dwain, no one else is even over 3 this year. Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry are tied for second all the way down there. Like, this explosive ability, we talk about trying to prioritize that, but Saquon truly in a tier of his own in terms of being able to just take it to the distance, literally from anywhere on the field.
Yeah, and the thing with Saquon is it's not just the speed, right? He can do all of it. Like, he can make the first guy miss. He can run through the first guy, and then he does have that gear to get all the way down the field. Will Shipley, trying to do his best impersonation later in the game, did get caught from behind. Ends up still scoring on the drive, so good for the Clemson rookie. But yeah, Saquon, very special. The thing that was most interesting to me about this game, Ian, is really Dan Quinn. Like, Dan Quinn is one of these guys that his players will run through a brick wall for him. They absolutely get up to play, but it's at the same time, it does seem like anytime he runs into a team like this that can run the ball, that has a superior offensive line, it's a major challenge for the Commanders. And you knew coming out, like, the best runs this year for Saquon, he's been good all around, but has been these sort of plays, these power kind of plays, toss plays, concepts where basically you're getting Saquon running full speed at the line of scrimmage. He's really just got like one move to make, and then it's just trying to get away to the races. And we've seen that multiple times this year. That's where the big plays have come from. So it was a big letdown, man, to come out and know that the one thing you've got to do is not let Saquon Barkley break off long runs on those kind of plays that he's done all year. And the Commanders were caught flat-footed right away. Now, you talk about all the time, coaches, they do X's and O's, but ultimately it comes down to the Joes on the field. And that's part of it. Didn't quite have the people to maybe execute the plan that Dan Quinn had in place. But I just thought coming out and giving up those big plays, ultimately Washington recovered. Like you mentioned, the turnovers end up being a bigger issue later in the game. But like, that's just not, I don't know, man. That just really bothers me. And maybe it's because I had the Dan Quinn experience firsthand in Dallas. So I also got to see those similar types of situations play out. But very motivational coach, right? And he's a guy that coaches these teams that get a lot of turnovers. But sometimes it feels like when it comes down to fundamentals in really big spots like this, it can be an issue for these Dan Quinn-led teams.
And just for Saquon in particular, it's such a damned if you do, damned if you don't equation, because if you want to really try to stack that box, that's great. And you have a good chance of stopping Saquon, in his tracks more times than not. But the problem is, if you're not doing it one time, that can be the difference between him, again, just going for 60 plus yards and a touchdown. Really saw that in those Rams games this year as well. So meanwhile, if you do want to play a lighter box, all right, congratulations. Now you're giving up Saquon or even Jalen Hurts on the ground at 4 or 5 yards per pop, and you can watch the Eagles march right down the field. So again, that really was the case for the Eagles offense most of the day, but those turnovers really were what did Washington in. It was 14-12, Dwain, after Washington scored, 9 unanswered points there in the second quarter. Seemed like they had a chance to go into halftime feeling decent about themselves, but then 72-yard touchdown drive and then another fumble on the kickoff, followed by, again, another touchdown by Philly to more or less blow the game open even before we reach halftime. So the other factor, because again, let's face it, Saquon is the star of the show in Philly, but finally got to see A.J. Brown really waking up from his, hibernation or reading break, whatever you want to call it, just beating the brakes off of Marshawn Lattimore one play after another. I'm sure Mike Evans was somewhere laughing and having a good time watching that film. But that really is the scariest part, Dwain. Like, we know Saquon, we know Hurts. That's the floor of this Eagles offense. They can run the ball, and that's fantastic. But when they can pass, man, like that is a scenario where you could see the Eagles hoisting up that Lombardi trophy because, man, if you can't slow down AJB and these guys either, good freaking luck out here.
Yeah, and it's potentially going to be a matchup issue for Kansas City because Kansas City likes to use a lot of man coverage. They like to use a lot of blitzes. And that's honestly when Jalen Hurts is at his best. Not necessarily against the blitz, but when you give him man coverage, you give him that clean first read. You got a guy like A.J. Brown that can be very physical, win at the point of attack. He can run those slant routes, those sort of things. That's really where they're most, connected. That's where they really vibe at. Whenever you get a lot more zone coverage, and then you add in the blitzes and things like that, that's what really makes Jalen Hurts hold the ball longer, can lead to some of the challenging plays that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. So it'll be really interesting to see how Kansas City handles this. But you mentioned it, man. It's just a loaded offense. We haven't even talked about Devonta Smith or Dallas Goedert yet. Goddard over the playoffs has been really, a critical element to their passing game. Obviously, this week it was A.J. Brown leading the way, but Dallas Goedert again was right behind him. He's really been more like the number 1 or number 2 in all of these games rather than it being the 2 wide receivers as far as the passing game goes. So, yeah, they've got 3 guys that can beat you in the passing game. They've got the best running back in the NFL. They've got a great offensive line. So it's a major challenge to stop these guys. And I think it actually is a matchup where, Steve Spagnuolo is going to have to think about it. Like, how does he really want to defend the Chiefs? Is it going to be, and you know how this always goes, Ian, it's like, do you just stick with what you've been doing all year? And you're like, hey, this is us. This is who we are. We don't care if that's also their strength to play against this kind of defense. This is our strength. So it'll be interesting to see what the cat and mouse game is there. I'm sure he'll have a few wrinkles up his sleeve. That's the beauty of having the 2 weeks off before the Super Bowl. These coaches have time to think about a few extra things that they can put into the game plan.
Obviously, 2 very different rosters from what we saw 2 years ago. But yeah, I mean, when Hurts and company did put up 35 against Spags and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, they certainly weren't the reason why they lost. So love that you mentioned A.J. Brown just, routinely being able to kill these defenses on slants, because if you guys want to bring back the slant boy moniker, he did lead the NFL in terms of receptions and receiving yards, specifically on slants this season. Shout out True Media for all of our per route data. But gotta give credit where credit is due. Dwain, I don't want to say we were slandering Jalen Hurts. He wasn't playing good football in the wild card round, divisional round, particularly as a passer. Really, it was nice to see arguably his best performance through the air since I believe it was that Steelers game when he was starting to get a lot of flack as well, during the second half of the regular season. But 4 of 15 when actually throwing 15 plus yards downfield. He was only 1 for 5 in these previous 2 playoff games. That was actually his first time with 4 plus downfield completions since week 9. So again, we saw Hurts break that long run, right at the start of the Rams game. And it's good seeing him have that scoot. Didn't seem like that his knee injury was overly impacting him. But again, 246 passing yards. No, he's not Josh Allen. He's not Patrick Mahomes from the pocket, man. But it is a situation where even if I don't think Hurts is in the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, Dwain, you're not going to need too many more fingers after 2 hands, if at all, to try to get him in there.
Yeah, I think for fantasy, for me, for sure, right? He's there. He's in that top 4 to 5 players. If I were starting a real life NFL team, I'm not sure he's in my top 12. Like, he's right there. Like, but I put him more in that middle tier. Like, I think you can win with Jalen Hurts. Obviously, the Eagles are proving that with a loaded team. Do I think Jalen Hurts is one of these guys, though, that could just put a team on his back? And to be fair to him, there's only a very small number of guys that can do that. Right. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, like, we know who these players are. You're very lucky if you're a franchise that gets to have one of those players. So I do think Jalen Hurts is in that bucket of players that you can win with. Again, Jayden Daniels is a guy that I think has a chance to have that more special high ceiling. But look, the Eagles, they've got a formula. They're working it. Yesterday, you mentioned the one thing I'll say about Jalen Hurts, man, that dude is tough. Like, he is very tough. He is not going to let anything keep him off the field if he can have anything to do with it. 26% of the team's design rushing attempts. There's a couple of kneel downs in there as well, so it's probably more like 20, 22%. But still, a guy coming off of a knee injury the week before comes out, decides not. I think it's always funny. You know, they have to practice this brace thing all week, and then suddenly in warmups they decide, I don't like the brace. I'm taking the brace off. I'm going without it. And, he did look good on the ground. Not great, but look good. Not scrambling as much over these last 3 games. So I think injury is still a factor for him as far as like what he's doing on the ground. You did mention he showed a little bit more whenever he had the long run against the Rams. But even in that one, like, getting caught from behind on it. So we'll see. I think it's nice that you get the 2 weeks off, for Jalen Hurts. I do think he fits perfectly in the scheme for Philadelphia. Again, I think a key component is like how much man coverage do the Chiefs really want to run? Because that is where Jalen shines. And those are his best games against the man-heavy teams.
Certainly, if they are going to be running a bunch of man, could be another nice game for Devonta Smith, who hasn't exactly blown up during his playoff stretch. But so far, man, 12 targets in the playoffs. And yes, he does have 12 catches. Only Amon-Ra St. Brown actually has a higher catch rate among all wide receivers with over 100 targets this year. So all reliable out there. And then, yes, even Dallas Goedert doing his thing. 4 games since returning from injury, he's had 55, 47, 56, and 85 yards. Even 2 rush attempts out there, Dwayne. They're giving Dallas Goedert fly sweeps. The first one worked so well that they ran it again out there. Still managed to get a couple extra yards. So great stuff from the Eagles. Again, of course, they will be facing the Chiefs in 2 weeks. Right now, we are seeing KC sitting as a 1.5-point favorite over at DraftKings, minus 125 money line though for KC. So pretty much a pick 'em at this point. Get your popcorn ready for that one. So still do want to break down the losing side of things with the Commanders right after a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. Super Bowl 59 is right around the corner, and it is the perfect time to get in on the action with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. And right now, they're giving all new customers $200 in bonus bets instantly after betting just $5. This is your shot to make every last play a moment to be remembered. Don't wait. Download the DraftKings app now and sign up using promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Always say it, Dwayne, but in the world we live in the NFL we follow, there's only going to be one team, one fan base, truly, just pure, blissfully happy by the end of the year. Unfortunately, that will not be the Washington Commanders this year. So still a heck of a season. I mean, going back the last time they were making it this far in the playoffs, 20, 30 plus years ago. So again, incredible, but ultimately couldn't quite get enough done when it mattered. Wouldn't exactly put the fault on Jayden Daniels. Mentioned those, 3 fumbles, but yeah, none of them were actually by him. Diami Brown, Austin Eckler, and then Jerry McNichols, aforementioned kickoff return issues were the main culprit there. So with Daniels, man, I honestly, I'm not trying to be Ryan Russillo, but I almost came away more impressed, by him after this performance. Just again, seeing him even in the face of adversity, continue to drive them down the field. And I thought one of the points you made about just the Eagles as a whole, Dwayne, like this has been the best defense in football by far over the past, 2.5 months of action. And even going back to the last time they played when he managed to take them down, on the last plays of the fourth quarter. Like if Daniels can move the ball like this against Philly, he can do it against anyone.
Yeah, I think Jayden Daniels has shown us like he's just one of these guys that's not fazed by anything. Doesn't matter what kind of defense he's facing. And look, like this is a team that he's not really surrounded by great weapons. Like he's got Terry McLaurin, and that's kind of it. Yeah, Zach Ertz is a veteran, wily tight end that knows how to work the zones and get underneath the coverage and settle down in the right spots. Obviously, we saw him have a huge game as far as his catch totals go. But still, they need more playmakers on this offense, Ian. And looking at what Jayden Daniels was able to do with basically one legit playmaker in the passing game in Terry McLaurin, I think it is really impressive, especially against some of the better defenses, Eagles included in that conversation. And more than one time this season, we saw Jayden Daniels do it. So yeah, if you are a Commanders fan, even though you come away with a loss, and I know it was a bit of a beatdown, you still have to feel great to your point. And there's nothing about Jayden Daniels in this game that I walked away going, oh, wow, we haven't seen that before. Like, he still did his part. This really did come down to the turnovers by the other guys. They probably still lose the game even without the turnovers. Like, I mean, they gave up a lot of points. Their defense has a lot of work to do. Like, a very aggressive defense, came through with some big games throughout the year, but man, overall, just too many leaky holes in the defense, and the Eagles were able to expose them in multiple different ways and really easily, mainly just on the freaking ground, man. How many yards did the Eagles end up rushing? Like 277 or something. It was insane how many yards they came up with for the entire game. Saquon finished with 115. Of course, he got half of that on one play. Will Shipley had another big play later. So a lot of rushing yards given up by this defense.
229 total for the Philly. Yes, that is a lot out there. So, yeah, I mean, Daniels also contributed some on the ground as well, had a nice touchdown where he showed a bit more of a cutback, I think, than we're used to. We know the man is, straight line ridiculous, but he can be shifty, make you miss in the phone booth sometime as well. Also did have one passing touchdown, 36 yards to Terry McLaurin. Came on a nice in-breaking route where Scary Terry caught it and then made a couple guys miss on his way to the end zone. So that really was like the one, quote unquote, red flag about Daniels. Like, okay, he always, I love the Nate Tice comp, kind of has that Johnny Knoxville to his game, taking too many big hits at LSU. We've seen, some of those quote unquote highlights, before, but it was more so trying to read the middle of the field. And I think another good example, Dwain, that just because someone necessarily isn't showing a high volume of doing a specific skill in college doesn't mean they can't do it at the NFL level. So again, seeing Daniels really be able to attack all areas of the field and, seeing Cliff Kingsbury do a good job playing to his strengths, again, one game after another. And at the end of the day, had truly one of the best rookie seasons ever, shattered the NFL record for passing yards by a rookie in a single, NFL playoffs, 822. Previous record was 572 by one Dangerous Wilson. So again, great stuff by Daniels, but wasn't getting a lot of help from his friends on the ground. Eagles, front seven, obviously very tough to deal with, all those Georgia Bulldogs everywhere, but just 36 rushing yards for Brian Robinson, 15 for Austin Eckler. Robinson's going to be back next year, Dwain. Eckler is someone that I believe he signed a 2-year deal, but they could get out of it if they really wanted to. Look, I'd like to see Washington, try to devote more resources to their pass catchers and their offensive line over the backfield. But at a minimum, I do think this could be more similar to a Baltimore Ravens backfield. And look, I understand Saquon just had this fantastic year, but when we're looking at running backs, playing with dual threat quarterbacks who aren't just complete aliens like Saquon, you do worry about the quarterback starting to steal more of the touchdowns near the goal line, which Daniels can do sometimes. But I do think there could be room for a Brian Robinson or maybe a player to be named later to really become the cog of this rushing attack, because again, I don't think that we necessarily have that position sewn up moving forward.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how this does play out as far as free agency goes. We've got the Commanders with the third most available cap at $87 million. So per OTC, like looking at the team, like I would say, I know we're talking about the offenses here, but like, man, they've got to do things on the defense. Like, I think the defense is the number one thing they've got to go after. Then they need to think about another playmaker on the outside. And you know how this stuff goes, Ian. Even though you have that much money available in free agency, how many times have we seen over the years that you hear that sort of rhetoric around, oh my God, they've got all this cap space. You and I both know, like, the real way you build your teams for the future is, yeah, you may plug a few holes here and there with free agency, but you don't just get to use that $87 million and suddenly you're going to revamp your whole roster. You're going to still have to add young players through the draft because the Commanders played so well. They're going to be further down in the draft. There are some very interesting wide receivers starting to work on the rookie supermodel right now, Ian. So put all the data in last week, got my first look at a lot of these guys. Not the same class that we saw last year, which obviously that's going to be a tough one to compete with for many years to come. But still, like there are some options that could be around there at the end of the first round if they did decide they wanted to go after a playmaker at the wide receiver position. So very interested to see what the Commanders do with free agency and the draft. I do think it's nice having all that money, but I think it's also, you got to be careful. I also see a lot of people throwing that number around like, oh my God, that means that the Commanders Commanders are just going to improve by leaps and bounds. And I've just been around long enough to see like just major debacles as far as the way free agency spending has gone down. And these teams that we thought have been so improved, and they really end up not being improved at all. So I think the Commanders definitely get better, but don't overrate the free agency dollars. That's all I would say.
Got several mock drafts out over at fantasylife.com. Matthew Freeman's has the Washington Commanders going with Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M edge defender. Meanwhile, our very own Thor Nystrom has them taking Derek Harmon, a defensive lineman from Oregon. So again, maybe don't have to spend the first round pick on a wide receiver. We'll see what happens there. But whether it's through free agency or just, day 2 picks at the position, would be nice to get some extra pass catchers. So last few notes, we did see again Eckler lose that fumble. Now has 18 fumbles since 2021, including playoffs, Dwain. That is 4 more than any other running back. Aaron Jones and Ramondre Stevenson, of course, are the next closest players. Mentioned Terry having a great game, and man, it's one of those things, Dwain, where like the one catch for 5-yard effort in the fantasy championship, it's still like one of my lasting memories of Terry this season. And it sucks because he has literally caught 10 touchdowns in his last 9 games. He's had 98 yards or a touchdown in 16 of his last 18 games. But again, just that one ill-timed dud just goes to show you that in fantasy land, man, it just can be one random week. Otherwise, a great season that can really do you in. So hate to see that. But hey, man, maybe next year at a minimum, not saying they need T. Higgins and Ted McMillan. We don't need to completely, revolutionize the wide receiver room. It'd be cool if they did it, but maybe get in a situation, Dwain, I'm not a doctor here. Maybe get in a situation where we don't need to throw the ball to Zach Ertz 16 times in the year 2025 of the season on the line. All I'm saying.
Yeah, look, I mean, and a lot of that came due to the game script, right? You had the Eagles basically saying, you guys are not scoring. We are willing to give up the little quick passes, the dump downs underneath the coverage. That's really who he goes to in those scenarios is Zach Ertz. I don't want to shortchange Zach Ertz. He had some critical third downs, right, that he picked up, and he does seem to be the guy that Jayden Daniels wants to go to in those scenarios. So more gas left in the tank than what most people gave, Zach Ertz credit for. But again, a lot of that is just, the trailing game script, Eagles not wanting to give up a big play down the field, and that just kind of funnels things. That essentially the Eagles are saying, throw it to Zach Ertz. Like, that's what we want you to do, and that's ultimately what Jayden Daniels was forced to do. I think 5.6 yards per attempt in this game because the Eagles were so hell-bent on not giving up the big plays.
Again, caught 11 of them, 104 scoreless yards for Ertz. So no, I'm not trying to hate on the guy. He hurdled a man, Dwain. That was incredible. I think that must be the very first Zach Ertz hurdle in the history of civilization. So overall, very good season. Did turn 34 in November, and he will be a free agent, but certainly still seemed to show, as you said, has some gas left in the tank. We'll see if Washington brings him back, or maybe if it's the Ben Sinnott show. Did have a nice catch on a very ballsy fake punt call by Dan Quinn early. That was a cool call, helped keep him in the game again, at least for the time being, until some of those aforementioned fumbles got in the way. So all in all, great season for the Commanders. Future is bright. And hey, if we know anything about the NFC East, they're going to have a different divisional champion next year because they do every freaking year out here. Why not the Washington Commanders? I would be guessing, again, they're going to be the number 2 team in the Vegas odds ahead of 2025. So fun stuff in the NFC Championship. We do have plenty of AFC Championship goodness to get to, though, guys, right after a quick word from our friends over at Mike's Hard Lemonade. We are deep into the playoffs, and for some, it is game time, but for a lot of others, it is heartbreak. But hey, guys, no matter how your season ended, Mike's Hard Lemonade is here to remind you that hard days deserve a hard lemonade. Chiefs 32, Bills 29. Dwayne O'Mac, the Chiefs covered as 1.5 point phase. The over cashed here at 49.5, and really was just a classic game. We'll get into again some of the issues. Yes, the refs. Yes, maybe a certain drop by Dalton Kincaid down the line that maybe helps swing the game. But end of the day, man, just the back and forth nature, really from the first quarter on. Another classic between really what's become the defining rivalry of the 2020s.
Yeah, you start to feel bad for Josh Allen though at some point, because like the games are so close, and to just barely lose at the end. And I mean, it's these are mirror images almost of one another as far as these teams go, right? They've decided they're not going to pay up huge dollars for a superstar wide receiver. They're going to spread the ball around across all these different players. Now look, the Chiefs added some young nice pieces. They still got Travis Kelce, so not saying they don't have playmakers, right? But it's not like the Eagles. they haven't loaded up with AJB, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert, right? It's a different sort of scenario, and both teams are doing it the same way. And to see them battling it out and able to put up so many points, it's just very, like, both teams are very good at playing complementary football, right? And I think they're well coached teams. They know what to do in the right scenarios. They, for the most part, don't shoot themselves in the foot. Now we'll talk about Josh Allen in a minute. He did try to early in the game, like that was like vintage Josh Allen for about the first 2 drives. I was starting to think, okay, man, like, I know you got a little bit of nerves, but let's calm down here. But yeah, it's amazing to see Patrick Mahomes continue to do this. Like, it's just because really, like, Josh Allen could have won that game, but Patrick Mahomes and this team somehow find a way to do it. It's just insane. You mentioned it earlier. Got 5 Super Bowls in the last 6 years. I mean, it is kind of funny, though. I was going back before the show and just going back through all the Super Bowls, and I'm like, man, Brady still managed to get in, though, in the championship game in the AFC with the Patriots, and then beat him with the Bucks. So Patrick Mahomes, 2 of his biggest losses in his career still came to the guy we can still call the GOAT for now, Tom Brady. We know Patrick Mahomes is going to eventually pass him here, but yeah, the Chiefs just continue doing their thing.
And that is the crazy part. Mahomes now, resting alone in second place, just past Joe Montana for playoff victories with 17. And he's still not even halfway to Tom Brady up there in first place at 35. So again, Mahomes is 29. That is incredible. It's the best start to a career ever by a quarterback. Even Brady wasn't doing this, to start his career. I know he got the 3 Super Bowls, but there was a stretch, man. Like, there was a 9-10 year stretch where the Patriots didn't make it back to a Super Bowl. Maybe Mahomes will have to go through that eventually. But for right now, man, certainly on pace to become the greatest of all time. And if you wanted to go ahead and just kind of make that LeBron argument where, like, no, he doesn't have the entire same resume, the flawless, Super Bowl victory, win-loss record and all that, okay, fine. But man, just in terms of what he does out there, really haven't seen anything like it. So again, just some key moments from the game. Dwain mentioned very first drive, Josh Allen nearly picked off on back-to-back snaps. Chiefs then go right down the field. Kareem Hunt touchdown, cast those plus 1,000 odds for anyone out there lucky enough to get that. And it seemed like the Chiefs might have a chance to not blow it, completely open early. You always knew the Bills were going to come back with a fight, but we finally got a turnover from KC, Dwain. First one in 83 drives. A stretch of 9 games was the longest streak in NFL history. Seemed like a bit of an exchange problem between Mahomes and Isaiah Pacheco. Gave the Bills a chance to go down there and get their own touchdown. James Cook, his first of 2. Another couple, nice plays before the half. Had a fun punt return by Nico Remigio. Love Dwain when it's the playoffs. And I saw him like last week. It was in the Texans game. He had the first really big return. It was like, who is that? We're in January.
Former Raider.
Someone on the Chiefs? Wow.
Yeah, he was on the Raiders earlier this year. Couldn't hack it. Now he lands on the Chiefs. Talk about a dream come true. You leave the Raiders and you land on the Chiefs. You're going to the Super Bowl. Congrats.
You always know these guys, I feel like, from your supermodels, Dwain. I'm like, who is this player? And you're like, actually, he's got a good
I know it from the utilization,
profile.
man. Like, it's the utilization report, man. You're grinding those numbers every week, seeing which players are playing, which ones aren't. He was a name that popped up like mid-season. So yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, Hartitz.
So here's the one of the first of several controversial moments. So before the half, the Chiefs are going down. Again, they had that 41-yard punt return. Then there's a 26-yard completion to Xavier Worthy. Jump ball. Mahomes actually had an open. I think it was Juju underneath. Decides to go deep. Replay showed that maybe there wasn't full possession of the ball, through the ground. They end up getting, the call anyway. So it set them up at the 3-yard line. So that was some controversy. That said, that was on a 3rd down. They had a defensive holding call anyway. So they're getting a first down regardless. I mean, we'll get to the other ones, Dwain, but I don't really think that one matters all that much. The Chiefs are at the Bills' 21-yard line. I think you could argue, if anything, being set up with the first down at the 21, maybe they don't score. Maybe Buffalo holds tight. That is a possibility. But let's not forget, the Bills went 73 yards in 7 plays right after that drive and got a touchdown. Like, there's a worst-case scenario where the Chiefs just get that holding call. All of a sudden, they score a touchdown, don't give the Bills enough time on the clock to go back down, and then all of a sudden, they have a 7-point lead that they wouldn't have otherwise had. So again, I'm not saying it was a complete catch. I think you could argue it definitely wasn't a catch, but not going to exactly hang that one as a reason for the loss.
Yeah, I think the challenge is, and I think you got to talk about like the penalties as a whole. And here's why, because these things can be very subjective. Like that call on that play, you could see another officiating crew calling it a different way, but it was in the gray area. right? And so it does come down to what the officials want to rule in that scenario. And these are the sort of things we hear play out all the time. We've got these refs in the booth with the announcer, and they'll come out and say, the exact opposite of what actually happens. They'll say, oh, no, it's going to be ruled incomplete or whatever the case may be. And then it ends up being complete. And so there's subjectivity to it. And the challenge is it does feel like these subjective calls seem to stack up in the Chiefs' favor over time. It feels like there's too many of them. It feels like it should be, hey, can we at least get a coin flip and get a ruling that goes against the Chiefs? Because we got another play later in this game that I think was also subjective, where technically you couldn't see the ball. We'll talk about the Josh Allen play whenever you're ready. But again, so two subjective plays, they both go in the Chiefs' favor. And I think that is what starts to drive people crazy. I think people can live with the fact that there is some gray area, but it does feel like every freaking single time it goes the Chiefs' way. And I think that's what and now, look, I haven't gone back and studied like all these subjective calls. Like if someone did that, that would actually be really cool. If they went back and looked at all these gray area kind of calls over the last year or two that the Chiefs have had, how many of them really went their way versus didn't go? Because I might just be thinking, this could be recency bias in my head. I might just be thinking it happens all the time for the Chiefs. It definitely has in the playoffs, like we've seen it. So I'm with you. In like a vacuum, that play doesn't bother me a ton. I also thought immediately Des caught it, but like it's like
he did.
One play doesn't kill me, but it's whenever you see multiple. And my wife is a huge Chiefs fan. Our son went to Texas Tech, so she's a huge Patrick Mahomes fan because of that. So it's funny because she'll sit there and she will ask me, she'll go, is that really that bad of a call? Because she's like, I'm going to have to hear about it at the gym tomorrow. She goes, I'm going to have to hear about the Chieferese, and I have to hear about how the refs gave it to the Chiefs. And so she has me like explain it to her. And that's exactly what I share with her. I was like, the problem is it's all the subjective calls that pile up that feel like they're going the Chiefs' way versus just, one that goes for them, one that doesn't go their way.
I think primetime bias probably has something to do with it as well. The Chiefs are always playing in the national game. And as we all know, hey, when the Chiefs are doing something Sunday night, obviously in the AFC Championship, going to get a bit more attention than maybe a bad call against the Panthers in Week 18. Sorry to, get that random stray in there, Panthers fans. But let's get to that next big call here because, again, mentioned after that Chiefs touchdown, Bills went right down the field, 73 yards in 7 plays, 34-yard touchdown to your guy, Dwain. Mac Hollins got a step deep behind Trent McDuffie of all people. And did his best Gabe Davis, playoff impression. Nice game for Hollins. Had another big catch later. Chiefs then start the second half with a punt. Bills answer 12-play, 80-yard touchdown drive. They convert 2 4th-and-1 conversions. Absolutely filthy cool touchdown by James Cook to just keep his body control in the air and extend the ball past the goal line to again score from 1 yard out. So things are going good for Buffalo. Got that 22-21 lead. Then the Chiefs have to punt again. Bills have all the momentum going down. Maybe they can make it a 2-score game, but then we had the controversial non-first down call on 4th and 1. So that really is, you said it, Dwayne, we didn't have the exact camera view seemingly where you could see the ball past the line, but we saw where the ball was. And for my money's worth, man, it seemed like it was past the line. Feel like the Bills kind of got hosed there. Not kind of, they did.
Yeah, I do agree. Again, it is subjective. This is another one of those calls where you could have two completely different referee crews call it different ways and it still be within the boundaries of, okay, it's plausible. These are the tough plays about football. You have so many bodies around the ball. You got all these offensive linemen. We don't always get the right angle on the camera, but I do agree with you. Like seeing where the ball was when I could see it, and then seeing where that line was and seeing where Josh Allen ended up, I could use my imagination to say that, yes, that actually, that was probably a first down. I would have leaned towards that probably being a first down. And again, that play alone is not the killer. But when you get multiple subjective plays that go the Chiefs' way in a game, that's what really frustrates people. But look, at the end of the day, the Bills, Josh Allen said it himself. He's like, look, we didn't beat them. We got to go out and we got to go through the champs to be the champs. Weren't able to do it. Patrick Mahomes, just time after time, Ian, just does exactly what he needs to do to win the game. This week, it was using his legs. The touchdown at the end of the game, that was a design rushing attempt. The Chiefs never do that. But they put Patrick Mahomes on a design counter play to score a touchdown. He had another scramble earlier in the game for a touchdown. In the playoffs, he's had scramble rates of 13 and 17%. Now, we've seen that in the past from him. But essentially, if it's not there, he's just showing that, guys, yeah, I'm not like Michael Vick or anything out here, but I'm not that far behind a lot of you other scramblers. When it really comes down to it, when I need it, I can do it. And so the guy just finds a way, and you just have to give him a hat tip. This game, it came down to really the run game, and obviously the Chiefs play great complementary football, across the board. I saw you had a good tweet about Kareem Hunt, not the explosive player that we once knew, but positive yardage, man, just out there running tough, like doing his part. Everybody did their part for the Chiefs, but ultimately Mahomes, man, just always seems to come up with that one thing, whatever it is you need, whether it's a scramble, a big throw down the field, a clutch 4th and short, conversion. It doesn't matter. Like, he's just going to come through with the play.
Mahomes' first career game with multiple rushing touchdowns out there. And yeah, he really does seem to pick it up in the playoffs. 29, rushing yards per game in all of his career playoff games, just, 20 in the regular season. So had a ridiculous stretch during, I know, this regular season of just first downs, per third down scramble. Really does seem like, only ran a 4.8, I think, coming out of Texas Tech. But man, that on-field speed just always tends to be just a bit faster than whatever poor defensive lineman is trying to get him on the ground.
Romo called his play. Romo called his play on that one key 4th down. He said they're either going to come out and try to get the hard snap, or it's just going to be a quick snap, immediate rollout, and Mahomes is just going to take off. And that's exactly what he did. But the Bills didn't know, but Romo did.
Yeah, they hit the same way. They scored that first touchdown, had the running back in the flat, Mahomes pump fakes and scores. And then, on the 4th and 1 later, they just ran it back because, hey, they didn't stop it the first time. Why would they stop it on the second time? So great play calling, as always, from Andy Reid and company. We'll finish things off, with the Bills here in a little bit. But quickly here on the Chiefs, again, just incredible seeing what Mahomes has managed to do. And good, cool stat from Underdog's Hayden Winks. 59% of Chiefs pass attempts yesterday went for a first down, 99 percentile performance instead of doing that. And that really has been the case for the team all year. Yeah, we've seen some explosives here and there from Xavier Worthy, but more than anything, man, it's just been a death by 1,000 paper cuts. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. And that does go back to the Kareem Hunt point, Dwain, where no, hasn't been explosive. I still don't think he's had a run longer than 20 yards all season long, but 56%, I believe, success rate on the season, just rushing. And success rate, for those that don't know, I believe it's measured by on first down, you got to get like 40% of the yardage needed for another first down. Second down, it's 60%. And then third or fourth down, you need to get the 100% of the yards needed for the first down. So just like, keeping the offense on track, consistently picking up yards. The only running backs better than Kareem Hunt this year, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, and David Montgomery. So look, if we have both guys fully healthy, I think Isaiah Pacheco has proven to be the more explosive running back. But let's face it, man, we're going on 6 straight games for Pacheco that he hasn't managed to even average 4 yards per carry. So all of a sudden you even things out in the big play department. And yeah, I do think Hunt is a better option for the Chiefs right now.
Yeah, I mean, these games are absolute battles, man. These are wars. I mean, these guys are going out there and it's such a physical game, and Kareem Hunt brings it. Like, there's value in that, right? Is that something you're going to build your team around? Is that something that you necessarily even need on your roster next year that can't be replaced? No. But in this moment, in this, spot, trying to get to the Super Bowl, which obviously the Chiefs are now in it. Like, Kareem Hunt, like, he's doing his part, man. He's not worried about the haters. He's like, this is what I do. This is what I have left. And this is what I'm going to go out and just continue to perform and provide the team what they need. And so the tough physical yardage, it does matter. Like, and those linebackers having to deal with, tackling him, those things add up over the course of a game. So I do think Kareem Hunt, to your point, he deserves a hat tip. I get it. He's nothing. It's the opposite of Saquon Barkley, right? I mean, Saquon Barkley goes out and turns those runs into 50, 60, 70 yards touchdowns. You're not getting that from Kareem Hunt, but he's doing his part for the offense. And like I said, it's just complementary football. And the Chiefs, they just know exactly which buttons to push when, and that is an absolute huge factor for them and their ascension to another Super Bowl.
Also, shout out to the, lesser heralded member of the backfield, Samaje Perine, 17-yard game-clinching reception on 3rd and ball game there late in the 4th quarter. So otherwise, for the pass catchers, mentioned Worthy, a bit of a revenge game for him. He even spoke after the game about the Bills passing on him at the end of the first round. He caught 6 of 7 targets for 85 yards and a touchdown. That, again, controversial contested catch, just his 3rd all season, thrown at least 25 yards downfield. First one since week 11 against, you guessed it, the Buffalo Bills. So good stuff there. Meanwhile, Hollywood Brown just caught 3 of 5 targets for 35 yards. I think caught the first 2 passes of the game. Seemed like he was on his way to having a huge performance, but again, just didn't do all that much afterwards. But neither did DeAndre Hopkins, 1 catch for just 11 yards. Really, Dwain, the second leading receiver, was surprisingly Juju Smith-Schuster, caught 2 of 3 targets for 60 yards. I mean, look, He had 130 yards back in week 5, just random blow up against the Texans, I believe. From week 6 all the way through the divisional round, the man only had 84 yards, and then he comes out here again with 60. So a bit of the, left alone, in the middle of the field variety, blown coverage-ish out there. But did make a guy miss on at least one of them. What did we see actually from the route rates? Was this still Worthy? And then obviously Hollywood Brown out there, and then Hopkins and Juju rotating. Who was kind of the big 3 for Kansas City?
Yeah, it was. Just a quick hat tip to Peter Overzet, wrote the newsletter this morning. He nailed it. He's like, how do you know, Tom? How do you know that Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT? Well, like Juju Smith-Schuster was his second leading receiver on the team, and you beat the Bills. Just finds a way to get it done. But yeah, it was Xavier Worthy, 89% route participation. That's the highest that we've seen from him. Well, ties was week 17, but this guy's just been an absolute, monster down the stretch. If we go back to week 15, whenever they decided to put him back in a full-time role, Ian, 31% target share, 27% target share, 22%. Didn't really play week 18. They didn't need him to, but now in the playoffs, 26 and 28% target share. We've talked about it before. A lot of it is design stuff around the line of scrimmage. Also getting him a little bit more involved on these drag routes and stuff against man coverage. Going to be hard to cover a guy that's run the fastest 40 time at the combine ever. So I like what they're doing with Worthy. Going to be really interesting to see what people do with him next year in fantasy football. We can talk about that more after the Super Bowl, but Worthy really did come on strong down the stretch, with those target shares. But if we look at the rest of the guys here, it was Hollywood Brown, number 2 on the team, 74% route participation. That is his highest mark with the team. Wasn't that much higher than last week, though. Basically the same role, 72% in the divisional round, had a 20% target share in this game. And then you had DeAndre Hopkins down here at a 31% route participation, so really losing playing time. And it was the surprise that Juju, maybe it's a hot hand approach, I don't know, he had a 63% route participation, so he was the third guy. Might have been a game plan thing just based on a matchup, not quite sure. Or maybe DeAndre Hopkins is still just dealing with an injury that we don't know fully about. Had that MCL issue very early in the year, a partial tear for a guy as old as he is. There might be something that's still hobbling him. Travis Kelce was out there doing his thing. Obviously, that was the player that the Bills focused on trying to take away. And so that's ultimately where Juju ended up coming through and picking up a little bit of the slack for Kelce not being able to get his normal targets.
I was just going to say, we've been talking about this game for 20, 30 minutes, and that is the first time we have mentioned Travis Kelce's name. Career postseason low, 19 yards, also tied a career low on just 4 targets. Did draw a holding penalty that, was a big third down play and stuff. Hamlin was all over him there. But, yeah, couldn't exactly get going there. Had the big divisional round game against the Texans. Not completely dust or anything, but, yeah, man, father time definitely, has knocked him down a few notches relative to, amazing player that we've seen for most of his career. Still very much, one of, if not the best tight ends in NFL history. Just, again, tough to do so when you have the entire Bills defense looking at you, and obviously other guys are picking up the slack anyway. So going to have a chance to boost those numbers here in 2 weeks against the Eagles. Before we start maybe previewing that Super Bowl, though, do want to give the Bills some love and break down what exactly went wrong for them right after a quick word from our friends over at Bud Light.
Even if you score, always stay hungry. No matter how hard you football, it's easy to Sunday.
Shout out to Fox Sports' David Hellman. Great Twitter follow, really fun guy. But Dwain, since 1972, NFL teams that have scored 4 touchdowns and committed 0 turnovers in the playoff game are 85-6. The Bills' last 2 playoff losses at Arrowhead account for 2 of those 6 games. So again, you can say that Josh Allen, maybe on that final play, he did have Khalil Shakur kind of running that Jeremiah Smith national championship touchdown motion comeback route. They actually hit it against the Chiefs earlier this year on a 4th down that worked out. But pretty easy to kind of say that in hindsight, not so easy to actually do so on the field when you got 2 guys breathing down your neck with Steve Spagnuolo, blitzing the house there on the penultimate play. So again, 4 playoff losses now to the Chiefs. No, Josh Allen has not won a single one of them, but 11 total touchdowns, just 1 turnover. Chiefs just keep getting away with it, man.
Yeah, man, look, you've got Josh Allen on your team. If you're the Bills, you still feel great about your future because you have Josh Allen. He is one of 4 quarterbacks in the NFL, like where I think every year he's just going to have you in it no matter what. Like he's on that list. So yeah, it is tough to see another loss here to Mahomes, but like if you've got to go play Mahomes, is there another quarterback, even though you've got these losses, is there another quarterback you would rather have going head to head with Patrick Mahomes other than Josh Allen? For me, there's not. Like he's right there. He's the next guy. It just so happens that like Patrick Mahomes finds a way to get these things done. He's an amazing player, but man, Josh Allen also amazing in his own right. And I talked about it earlier, man, really a mirror. These two teams are a mirror of one another. Like try to play really good defense, not investing a lot of money into their wide receiver room. They're trying to spread it around across multiple different guys. And it just, came up a little bit short. I will say, Ian, it's still crazy to me that Amari Cooper, after you trade for him, can only be out there for 54% of the pass plays. I will tell you right now, Amari Cooper is the best wide receiver on the Bills. And I do think that bothers me. I know everybody loves what we're seeing with the Bills offense and with Joe Brady and all these things, but man, that bothers me. How can you not find a way to get a guy like Amari Cooper on the field? I get it. Amari Cooper's never lived up to being this high-end wide receiver one, but man, we've seen him be a borderline wide receiver one in fantasy for multiple years, and we've seen him come through with absolute monster games in big games at times. So I just don't understand how you don't get Amari Cooper more on the field whenever you know that you're going to have to come through with some more big plays in a game like this. Look, again, the Bills still kept it close, Ian. It was a great game. This was a fantastic game. This, I hope the Super Bowl lives up to this game that we just got. But like that would be my one beef is like, how do we not get Amari Cooper more on the field at this point?
And look, he was banged up, had kind of the hand injury, during the course of the regular season, but he's not on the injury report right now. That a couple of weeks ago was more a personal matter, if I'm not mistaken. And he's now been on the team over 3 months at this point. Okay. We had the touchdown the first week where, Keon Coleman was telling him on his hand, what route to run. We're past that. You have a guy who has been one of the league's best route runners, for really the duration of his career. And I'm with you. You're picked 4th overall. You are expected to be this like legit top 5, top 10 NFL receiver. And even if he's never exactly been that, there was a stretch there, man, kind of the Cowboys years, maybe even the first year with the Browns or two. I don't think you can name 20, 25 better wide receivers than Amari Cooper. And again, the fact that who is he playing behind here? Matt Collins. Okay, that was a good game and everything. But you've been right. More weeks than not, we're not exactly getting these booms out of Matt Collins. Keon Coleman, hopeful contested catch artist in the future. For some reason, we're throwing, key 3rd and goal fates to the guy right now. Let's face it, he has not been great. Caught just 2 of 9 end zone targets on the season, 6 of 21 passes thrown 20-plus yards downfield. We have a pair of tight ends who, we'll get to Kincaid's drop here in a minute, but let's face it, not exactly moving the needle there. I mean, okay, they got fined. They were a couple calls away from taking down the Chiefs in Arrowhead in the AFC Championship. So I'm not trying to make this out to be some massive problem. And, we saw Stephon Diggs, not exactly ball out there in the playoff stretch last year. But, man, even if they just had someone, Dwain, that can give them some extra juice after the catch, and maybe that was the hope for Curtis Samuel coming in. Did catch a nice, short touchdown. That was cool. Khalil Shakur is not bad, but if we had to go ahead and just take every single team's wide receiver and tight end rooms and kind of combine them, I don't think the Bills are in the top 15. And the fact that Amari Cooper would be the guy that can give them the best chance, hate to see him not playing more.
Yeah, a lot of the guys starting on the Bills can't start for a lot of other NFL teams. Like, that's just the bottom line. And that's not trying to knock Khalil Shakur. Like, he's come out and he's done his part. He's been the most consistent Bills receiver. But, he's more of a chain mover. Like, he's not giving you the big plays. Like, Amari Cooper has shown that he can catch the ball and give you that run after the catch ability. Not going to get over the top of you all the time, but he can set those routes up, like with the sluggo type stuff. You hit him on the slant a couple times, then later you hit him on that slant and go. So, I don't know. I feel like I understand they wanted to go the opposite way of where they were with Stephon Diggs, right? Which was, oh my God, we got to have this diva that wants the ball all the time. And I know they want to stay, and they've had the mantra, right, that everyone eats. And it's worked for the most part, to your point. Like, you're right there in the AFC Championship game with the Chiefs, so I don't want to overreact. But again, it still comes down to playmakers, man. It comes down to mismatches on the field, and I know Amari Cooper's good enough to be on the field more than he was. That's all I'm going to say.
And I think the same sentiment is true for James Cook. This guy had 85 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, had another 49 receiving yards. Like, we're talking 8.4 yards per touch, and you can't get him the ball on the final drive. What was the point of starting off with that toss to Ty Johnson? 3:33 remaining in the AFC Championship, and that's your go-to. So, look, Joe Brady, far more good than bad this year, but to me, that was really, probably the most puzzling play call of the day. So, last thing we're going to get to, though, with the Bills is that aforementioned Kincaid drop at the end of the game. Miraculous job by Josh Allen to really even get the ball off. And the fact that he did manage to find a way into Kincaid's hands downfield, truly it was a special throw. But unfortunately, Kincaid is going to have to be hearing about that one for quite some time. At this point, Dwain, 2 years into his career, most memorable moment continues to be that time he just called out like the 2 or 3 Lions, maybe it was Rams, that were on the ground after he made a cool contested catch. Fun moment. I know he's done a good job, drawing a lot of targets, particularly as a rookie. But, I don't think this is exactly going to be helping his cause to try to get a bigger role in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, man, look, he's going to be a third-year tight end. He's still a first-round draft pick. He had a 24% targets per route run this year, but it is concerning, and it goes back to the Bills' mantra, right, of really, hey, everyone eats. Is that going to change next year? Like, if it does, then maybe Dalton Kincaid is a guy that can benefit. I think the good thing is in fantasy football, Dalton Kincaid is not going to be a high draft pick next year, right? He's going to be a guy that'll be more in that group of, well, maybe, he is a former first-round draft pick. He's on a good offense. My guess is, we'll see. I know we've got underdog big board drafts kicking off. We'll see where he's going. But my guess is Ian probably being taken more like a low-end tight end one. And, so if I draft a bunch of teams, which obviously I'm a degenerate, we know that I'm going to draft a bunch of teams. I'm going to have some Dalton Kincaid. There are some nice positive underlying things. I don't want to let that one play. I don't even care. I care because it hurt the Bills, right, and their chance to win the game. But ultimately, that has no bearing in my mind at all on what we should think about Dalton Kincaid moving forward. The bigger issue is that when he came back from his injury this year, he never was able to get back into anything close to a full-time role. That Dawson Knox, a guy that for the history of his career has never really been a high-end target earner, is just really, Dawson Knox does some nice things to help his team, right? Tight ends aren't just pass catchers. He does things that the Bills like. Obviously, they paid him. They gave him that extension a couple of years ago. So I'm not going to say that Dawson Knox is terrible, but he shouldn't be enough to hold Kincaid back, and it has been. And so that's ultimately the biggest thing. That's concerning to me that you haven't been able to, despite a team investing first-round draft capital, because that in itself is something that's going to make them want to get you on the field. And the fact that he hasn't been able to find his way into a full-time role yet, that is challenging. And again, also the targets have been good as far as targets per route run, but he doesn't do anything with them. This guy is just not very good with the ball in his hands. So that's also a concern.
So again, sorry, Bills Mafia, another crushing blow. It is cool that you guys are good enough to be in these positions at the first place. But yeah, go ahead and, sulk, lick those wounds, and we'll get ready for the offseason here as the weeks progress. Dwayne, we got to get out of here real quick, though. We have the Chiefs 1.5-point early favorites over the Eagles. What is your early lane?
Yeah, man, give me that. I'm taking the Chiefs. I'm not trying anymore. I'm not trying to go against the Chiefs anymore. I'm done. It's I've learned my lesson. I've just learned my lesson. I just hope for a good game. That's what I hope for.
I hope so too. Please, football gods. But yes, if Patrick Mahomes is playing a playoff game, I'm going to bet on him. And if we lose, well, at least we went down betting on the King. So congrats, Eagles. Congrats, Chiefs. Better luck next year, Commanders and Bills. And with that, guys, we're going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. We hope you guys enjoyed. And guess what? The rest of this week, running back and wide receiver, way too early ranks, going to have some good discourse going on here. So make sure you subscribe, tune back in for that. So for Dwayne, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.